trying to control everything. Karen Phillips sat alone in the hospital parking lot, her car engine still humming. It was 3:12 a.m. The fluorescent lights from the ER windows spilled across her windshield, blurring the shape of her daughter's name on the admission slip, Emily Phillips, 24. Karen had already updated Emily's supplement schedule, checked tomorrow's meal plan, and set medication reminders for the week. She had done everything right. Every list, every rule, every precaution, and yet here they were again. In the quiet, her hands trembled around her phone. She scrolled one last time through the notes she had made on rare lung conditions. She didn't know what else to do. The hospital didn't let her in right now. So she sat, waited, managed the only thing she still could, her thoughts. But they weren't cooperating tonight. Echoes of last week's argument with Emily resurfaced, her daughter's voice shaking with frustration. "Mom, I know you love me, but it's like I can't breathe when you're trying to protect me." Karen blinked back tears. "I've done everything right," she whispered into the silence. "Why is everything still falling apart?" And then it hit her, not like a revelation, but like a quiet unraveling. Maybe this wasn't about fixing anything. Maybe this was about letting go. Karen hadn't always been this controlling. But ever since her husband left during the second year of the pandemic, citing burnout distance, and needing to find himself, she found herself clinging to structure the way a drowning person clings to driftwood. Their divorce was quiet, almost too polite, like neither of them had the energy to fight. He left, and the house felt heavier, not emptier. Karen poured herself into planning, budgeting, meal prep, early retirement projections, all organized in color-coded spreadsheets. Then she lost her job. Her accounting firm downsized in early 2022. She'd worked there 17 years. Just like that, gone. No performance issue, no scandal, just numbers on someone else's balance sheet. For weeks, she wandered through the house at odd hours, opening drawers just to close them again. She'd go to the grocery store twice in one day because she couldn't remember what she already bought. Eventually, she replaced the chaos with a rigid daily routine. Wake up at 6:00 a.m. Yoga, black coffee with almond milk, 3 rounds of email sorting, then a 2-hour slot titled Focus. She called it healing. It was really hiding. Her daughter Emily had been living at home on and off since college. After a rough breakup and the start of long COVID symptoms, she needed care. Karen, without hesitation, stepped in. She researched inflammation diets, subscribed to holistic medicine newsletters, and ordered turmeric root in bulk. But caring soon became managing. Karen would wake Emily with protein shakes, send daily mindfulness reminders via text, and check her screen time usage at night. She said it was love. But Emily began to flinch at every suggestion, every note taped to the fridge. One afternoon, Emily came down with a dry cough and shortness of breath. Karen immediately drove her to urgent care, then scheduled 3 follow-up appointments with specialists before the initial labs even came back. When the diagnosis arrived, an uncommon but non-life-threatening lung condition, Karen spun into action. New diets, oxygen saturation monitors, diffusers, filtered air systems. She installed an app on Emily's phone that tracked her oxygen levels, heart rate, and steps. Emily didn't say anything, but she didn't say much of anything anymore. The silence between them stretched into days. Then came the breaking point. Emily stood in the kitchen, tears in her eyes, and said quietly, "I know you think you're helping, but it doesn't feel like love anymore. It feels like I'm your project." Karen didn't respond. Couldn't. Her hands were clenched around a grocery receipt. She watched her daughter walk out the door with a single overnight bag and disappear into her boyfriend's car. Karen didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her chest-tight heart beating faster than it should. Around 3:30 a.m., she stood up to make tea, but her hands were shaking. She dropped the mug. Porcelain shattered across the floor. She stared at the pieces and suddenly sat down right there, legs folding under her. The room began to tilt. She hadn't eaten all day, hadn't drunk much water. She had been moving on autopilot since Emily left, checking emails. She didn't need rewriting lists that no longer mattered. Her mind buzzed, but her body was done. Her body, unlike her brain, refused to keep pretending everything could be fixed. Karen crawled to the couch and curled up in a fetal position. For the first time in years, she didn't reach for her planner or phone. She just lay there, tears quietly sliding down her face with the growing realization that she hadn't been helping anyone, not Emily, and not herself. The next morning, her throat sore from crying and her limbs weak from exhaustion, she opened her laptop. Not to build another plan, but to search for anything that might teach her how to stop. That's when she found the article, Healing Through Stillness, a Buddhist retreat for family caregivers. That's when she found the article, Healing Through Stillness, a Buddhist retreat for family caregivers. It was an ad, really. Some meditation center in Colorado that offered weekend immersions in mindfulness for those caring for chronically ill loved ones. Karen read it 3 times before closing her laptop, then reopened it the next morning. Then booked the retreat. She packed like she was preparing for a medical evacuation: vitamins, electrolyte powder, extra masks, hand sanitizer, a copy of When the Body Says No. She also brought a small framed photo of Emily as a child, laughing wild-haired, unapologetically free. Karen stared at that photo more than once during the drive through the winding Colorado backroads. The retreat was held in a modest center tucked beneath a ring of pine-covered hills. No cell service, no Wi-Fi. Each participant got a small, simple room with a window, a mat, and a folded blanket. Meals were silent. Schedules were loose. Karen's first instinct was panic, then irritation, then tears. She met Mari on the second morning. Mary was in her 60s, shaved head, faded tattoos on her forearms. A former hospice nurse turned Zen Buddhist nun. During one of the optional sharing circles, Karen admitted she didn't know how to stop being afraid. She admitted she didn't trust stillness. Mari didn't nod sympathetically. She simply said, "Control is what we build when we're terrified of falling apart," Mari said. "But maybe falling apart isn't the enemy." Karen looked up, startled. There was something in Mari's voice more cracked than calm. Then Mari added, almost like a confession, "I buried my daughter before I ever learned to sit with her fear. That's why I stayed. That's why I wait with people like you." Karen didn't know what to say, but something inside her cracked too. Just a little. That line clung to Karen like a burr. Later that day, during a body scan meditation under a cluster of tall pines, Karen noticed something she hadn't in years. Her body was screaming. Not with pain, but with effort. Her shoulders were locked, her jaw tense, her breath shallow, fast. She tried to slow it, but Mari's voice echoed gently. "Don't fix. Just feel." Mari's voice softened. "This is what we call anicca impermanence. Everything shifts, even this tightness in your chest. You don't have to fight it, just feel it change." Karen let go. Not of fear, not of pain, but of control over what happened next. For the first time in years, she didn't chase an outcome. She let the moment hurt. Let it be. That night, she didn't make a plan. She didn't write a list. She didn't even brush her teeth. She sat by the window and watched the wind stir the trees outside. Something inside her had shifted, not everything, not all at once, but just enough to notice. And sometimes that's where real change begins. When Karen returned home, everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. The living room still held the same gray couch, the same flickering lamp with the loose switch, the same ceramic bowl by the door where Emily used to drop her keys. But it was the silence that hit her. Not the kind that asked for a break, but the kind that pointed to absence. Emily still hadn't returned. Karen wasn't expecting some tearful reunion, but she thought maybe after Colorado, after Mari, she'd be ready to show up differently. She tried. The first few days she resisted the old habits. No texts with health tips, no passive-aggressive recipe links, no unsolicited supplement packages delivered to Emily's boyfriend's house. Then the anxiety returned. Subtly at first, she began checking Emily's social media. She left messages like "just checking in, no pressure," which meant, of course, pressure. When Emily didn't respond for 3 days, Karen panicked. She booked an appointment with a pulmonary specialist Emily had once mentioned in passing. She even called to ask about availability under her daughter's name. When she told Emily what she'd done, she expected irritation. What she got was silence. Then a single-line text, "You're doing it again." Karen stood in the middle of her kitchen phone in hand, staring at those 4 words. Something inside her buckled. She didn't cry, she didn't yell. She just sat down. For a long time. Later that night, she opened the window in her bedroom and stared into the black Colorado sky. The mountains in the distance looked soft, almost tender under the moonlight. Her mind drifted to Mari's voice again. Love doesn't need to manage everything. Sometimes it just needs to be allowed. Karen thought about control, not as an action, but as a language she had learned too well. It had kept her afloat when her marriage dissolved, when the virus came, when the world shut down, and every familiar structure vanished. Control gave her the illusion of safety. It let her believe that if she just did enough, read enough, planned enough, tried hard enough, no one else would leave. But real love was never about guarantees. It wasn't safe. It wasn't efficient. It didn't come with a checklist. The next morning, Karen sat at the kitchen table with an untouched cup of tea. She picked up her phone to check Emily's status, then put it back down. For the first time, she chose not to reach. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but because something in her understood that love also means stepping back. That weekend, she did something she hadn't done in months, nothing. She didn't clean, she didn't schedule, she didn't search. Instead, she took long walks through the park near their house, the one she used to visit with Emily when she was little. She watched the way the wind moved through the trees, random, uncontrolled, alive. She noticed how squirrels darted without direction, how clouds shifted without permission. On Sunday, she returned to the retreat center, not as a participant this time, but as a visitor. Mari was tending to the small herb garden behind the main hall when Karen arrived. "You came back," Mari said without surprise. "I'm not doing well," Karen admitted. "Good," Mari replied. "That means you're not pretending anymore." They walked together in silence for a while. Then Karen asked the question that had been growing inside her since the retreat. "What do I do with this guilt? The kind that keeps saying, 'You should have been better. You should have known.'" Mari paused beside a patch of lavender. "You don't do anything with it," she said. "You sit with it. You let it burn a little. And eventually it will show you the part of yourself that still believes love has to be perfect." Karen sat on the edge of the wooden platform, her hands resting on her knees. She closed her eyes and let the air move through her. Inhale. Exhale. The world didn't need her to be flawless. It needed her to be present. That night back home, she wrote Emily a letter. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter, No advice, no plan. Just words from a mother who finally understood that proximity is not the same as presence. I'm sorry for trying to love you through control. I know now that fear shaped the way I showed up, not trust. I don't want to manage your life. I just want to witness it. I don't need you to reply. Just know I'm here not to fix anything but to stay. She didn't mail it. She left it on Emily's desk, where a few of her daughter's old books still sat untouched. 2 days later, Karen came home from a walk to find Emily in the kitchen. No grand entrance, no big speech. Just her daughter barefoot, stirring a pot of soup on the stove. I was craving something warm, Emily said without turning around. Karen stood frozen in the doorway. You want some? Emily asked. Karen nodded. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. She just sat down, and for the first time in a long time, they ate together without fixing, without managing, without fear. And that, she realized, was enough. For a few weeks, it felt like something had finally settled. Karen didn't push. Emily didn't retreat. There were long stretches of silence between them, but they no longer felt loaded with tension. They simply were. Karen cooked without asking about sugar content. Emily came and went without announcing every step. It wasn't harmony. It was something quieter, more spacious. But growth never unfolds in a straight line. It started with the fatigue. Emily had been coughing again, this time deeper, wetter. Karen noticed it during breakfast, when Emily leaned over her tea and muffled a sharp breath into her sleeve. She said it was just allergies, but Karen had heard this sound before. Her mind snapped to the spreadsheet. She still hadn't deleted the one with symptom tracking and oxygen levels, the one she promised herself she wouldn't use again. For 2 days, Karen said nothing. But she couldn't sleep. She lay awake wondering whether ignoring it made her negligent. What if it was something worse this time? What if letting go meant failing to act? On the 3rd morning, she broke. While Emily was in the shower, Karen called the pulmonologist's office again. She scheduled a checkup using Emily's full name and birth date, explaining that it was just precautionary. She wrote the time down on a sticky note and placed it on the fridge, Wednesday, 2:30. Dr. Lin, just in case. That night, Emily saw the note. She didn't say a word. She picked it up, held it between her fingers for a moment, then dropped it in the trash. Karen stood at the kitchen sink watching the moment unfold, like a scene she had already memorized. I thought we were past this, Emily said finally. I know, Karen whispered. You said you were done trying to manage me. Karen nodded slowly, unable to speak. I can't keep proving I'm not your emergency, Emily said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. She left again. This time she didn't say when she'd be back. Karen sat at the table long after the door closed. The tea she'd poured went cold beside her. Her fingers traced the rim of the mug. She read the trash can like it was a verdict. The appointment note crumpled and gone. Her mind froze, then raced. She wanted to say something. Apologize. Explain, undo. But the words tangled somewhere between her throat and her fear. She didn't cry. She didn't scream, but her body folded into the kitchen chair like a house collapsing inward. Am I helping her? Or just trying to survive through her? The question hit harder than the silence. It wasn't loss. She felt it was the unbearable truth that maybe she had become part of the thing her daughter needed space from. Letting go wasn't a single moment. It was a practice. A muscle you had to stretch every day, even when it hurt. That night, Karen didn't call. She didn't text. She opened her journal and wrote the one sentence that kept echoing inside her. Control is love's disguise when love is afraid. She sat with that. She let it sting. The next morning she woke early and did something she hadn't done in years. Nothing. No phone, no checklist, no plans. She brewed a pot of tea, opened the windows, and just sat. Let the air in. Let the quiet stay. That weekend, she drove back to the retreat center not to escape, but to remember. Mari was in the garden again, pulling weeds from the lavender bed. She looked up with a soft smile when Karen approached. "I thought I was doing better," Karen said by way of greeting. "You are," Mari said. "You just forgot that healing is non-linear." "I broke the promise I made to Emily." Mari wiped her hands on her robe and motioned for Karen to sit. "No, you didn't," she said. "You kept a different promise to yourself. You caught yourself in the pattern." That's progress. They sat in silence. Birds chirped somewhere overhead. Wind moved slowly through the trees like breath. "I thought letting go meant one big surrender," Karen said. "But it's not. It's 1,000 small ones." Mari nodded. "Exactly. It's choosing presence over panic, over and over again." Karen spent the day at the center. She didn't meditate. She just walked, observed, let the world be what it was. At one point, she sat by a stream and watched a leaf drift along the water. It didn't steer. It didn't resist. It moved with the current, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, always held. She thought about Emily, about how much of her parenting had been shaped by fear of illness, abandonment, failure. How many times she'd wrapped that fear in care and handed it to her daughter like a gift. But love doesn't arrive wrapped in anxiety. It arrives when we stop clenching. That evening back home, she wrote Emily another letter. She didn't try to fix anything. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply reflected what was real. "I forgot. Again. I let fear get loud. But I also remembered. I remembered that you don't need a manager. You need a mother who trusts you. So here I am, not with advice, but with space. Whenever you're ready, it's yours." She left the letter on Emily's desk, unsure if it would be read. 3 nights later, the front door creaked open close to midnight. Karen looked up from the book she wasn't really reading. Emily stepped inside, hair damp from the rain backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey," she said softly. Karen didn't get up, didn't reach for her. She just met her gaze and said, "Welcome home." Emily dropped her bag by the door. She didn't say much, but she stayed. That night they watched a movie, an old one they used to love. Karen didn't ask about symptoms. She didn't hover. At one point she got up to make tea and, without thinking, asked chamomile. "Okay." Emily smiled. Perfect. They sat side by side, steam rising between them. The silence was still there, but now it felt like a kind of trust. Later, as Karen turned off the lights, she realized something essential. She would forget again, and remember again. And that was okay. Healing wasn't about arriving. It was about returning. The kitchen was quiet, save for the soft hum of the dishwasher and the occasional drip from the faucet. Karen stood barefoot on the cool tile floor, drying the last plate from dinner. Emily had already gone upstairs. There was no grand conversation that night, no closure. Just a shared meal, a quiet laugh over an old inside joke, and the unmistakable sense that something had shifted, not in a dramatic way, but in the kind you feel more than see. Karen looked out the window. The garden was overgrown, unpruned. She used to tend it every Saturday, clipping and organizing and planning the next bloom. Now she found beauty in its mess. There was life in what she couldn't control. She thought about the months behind her, the long nights, the spreadsheets, the fear disguised as certainty. She had loved her daughter with every ounce of her being, but she had also loved through a lens of panic. And panic is not love's companion. It's its shadow. Letting go hadn't meant losing her daughter. It meant finding a new way to love her, without urgency, without strategy, without needing to be the hero. Sometimes healing isn't an event. It's the decision to stay quietly, imperfectly, again and again. That night, Karen did not check the air quality index. She did not research new supplements. She did not tiptoe into Emily's room. Instead, she sat on the edge of her bed, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply, fully, without bracing for what might come next. For the first time in a long while, she didn't need to fix anything. She just needed to be here. Maybe you've loved someone so fiercely, so desperately, that you tried to protect them from every possible crack in the world. Maybe you built systems, calendars, routines, careful words to hold everything together. And maybe, like Karen, you realized too late that what you were really holding on to was fear. The truth is, we all want control when life feels uncertain. We crave order because chaos reminds us of our limits. But sometimes, in trying to protect the people we love, we forget to let them breathe. We forget that love is not control, it's presence. Quiet, open, unpolished presence. If you've been holding tight, waiting for the plan to work, for the pain to stop, or for someone to come back, try this, let go. Just a little. Just long enough to hear your own breath. Because what's real doesn't need to be managed. It just needs to be met. And if you forget tomorrow, that's okay. You can return again. That's what healing is made of, not certainty, not perfection, just the courage to be here one more time.